This episode is brought to you by our awesome friends of the podcast, Drillbit Labs, run by co-founders Lawson Pybus and Thomas Stokes. Drillbit Labs is a leading UX research and digital strategy consulting firm. They work side by side with UX and product design leaders to elevate their digital strategy, delight their users, and outperform business goals. If you're interested in partnering with them, reach out to them via their website, drillbitlabs.com, or ping them at info@drillbitlabs.com. Now, in this episode, we'll be touching on some sensitive topics that is around mental health. Now, before we do get into this episode, I did want to share some information and contact details of a charity that is based in the UK called Mind. Now, when you're living with a mental health problem or supporting someone who is, having access to the right information is vital. Visit the website of this charity, which is www.mind.org.uk, or contact their info line at 0300, so that is 0300 123 3393, or send them an email, info@mind.org.uk. Their lines are open from 9 a.m. to 6 p.m. Monday to Friday, except for bank holidays. Also, Mind have over 100 local Mind branches across England and Wales. You can look up your nearest local Mind branch on their website, or call or send them an email on the details I mentioned before. Mind also have an online free-to-join peer support community called Side by Side. Side by Side is an anonymous network where people can share experiences and support each other and be themselves. So remember, don't suffer alone. If you are struggling, especially if you're looking for work and you're struggling with the pressure and stresses that do come along with unemployment, don't suffer alone. Don't suffer in silence. I know what that means, and I know how difficult it can be. So make sure you find the support that you need. And if you do find yourself alone, make sure you reach out to a charity, and especially one like mine that can provide you the support and the care that you need at that time. Okay, so I'd like to welcome all of our listeners to another episode of the UXR Minds podcast. And before we do begin, I would just like to remind all of our listeners, if you haven't done already, give us a like, subscribe. I don't know all of the terms that are used now for YouTube, Spotify, or where you listen to your podcast. That just helps in getting this out to as many people as possible. And also, especially with this episode, providing the help that we can do in the field of UX and especially UX research. So, as I just mentioned, this is a special episode around the period of the year for mental health awareness, and I just wanted to invite a guest on today who has something to say about this topic of mental health, and hopefully we can provide some sort of relief or even just some advice to people that are struggling maybe with their mental health, especially in the job search, which I myself am experiencing at the moment. So I'm really happy to get on to the podcast Mirta Rotondo, a fellow Italian, even if I'm not Italian, but I would class myself as an adopted Italian. And she is the founder of Mindmapp, and she has some background in experience design, so an experience design leader, if I remember correctly. So thank you for coming on to the show.
Thank you, Dale, for having me, or ciao, Dale, if you prefer. We love to adopt you as an Italian.
If you want, we can speak in Italian, but maybe most of our listeners wouldn't understand. So, no, thank you for coming on.
It is in English then. Thank you for having me. I really
No
hope
problem.
that in this special edition for the Mental Health Awareness Day, I can contribute in my own way. I mean, I'm not an healthcare professional, but I do care about mental wellness a lot. So yeah, I guess we can dig into that.
Absolutely. Yeah, that's kind of why I wanted to get you on. You mentioned that you're not a mental health professional, but you're very involved in this mental health awareness, and I noticed on your profile that you mentioned you're a mental health advocate. So I thought you were a good profile to get on, especially with this mind map, which we'll get onto later, which will, I'm sure, be a benefit to the users. But maybe if you'd like to just introduce yourself in a bit more detail to our listeners, just so they know kind of your background, who you are, and what you're doing now.
Yeah, so, all right, you presented me. My name is Mirta, and I've been working in tech for about 20 years, I would say.
Okay.
Over the years, I've launched startup and contributed to their growth through experience design strategy, as you were saying.
Nice.
Over the years, I've also been wearing many hats, I guess. I've been a founder, I've been an individual contributor, a senior leader, and recently also an advisor. The past 7 years, I spent them at TrueLayer, which is the European leader in open banking payments.
Ah,
And there I was part of the founding team and served as the vice president of experience design and brand.
wow.
During my time there, I managed a team of about 40 people, and that was including product design, UX, research, brand, but also events, comms, and design operations. So quite a
Wow.
multidisciplinary team, I
Yes,
guess.
a lot on your plate.
So yeah, that's about like I guess the experience design leader part. Now
Mm,
instead, I'm starting a new adventure, which is Mindmapp, as you said earlier. What is
mm,
Mindmapp? It's a platform for personalized emotional support. What
mhm.
we are building is basically something that combines information architecture with artificial intelligence in order to simplify the complexity of thoughts and feelings.
Wow.
I can also add something, I guess, about myself, which adds like the human touch.
Absolutely.
I'm a, I'm a mother of two. As you said, I'm Italian. I
Hmm.
lived in San Francisco and in London, and now just recently, after about 10 or more years
Wow.
abroad, we moved back with our family in Italy, in Roma.
Very nice, very nice. Yeah, I fully understand the children part. That can be a big change in your life. Are they still
Yeah.
young? Are they little or?
Well, I mean, 1.5 and 3.5. Yeah, they were born,
Wow.
both of them in London. So yeah, the move back to Italy
Oh,
with two kids and a dog was not easy, but here
dog,
we are.
goodness me. So it's almost like three kids if you include the dog.
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
Well, no, I completely understand. We have a 2-year-old, so yeah, like in the middle of your two children. That's really nice. Maybe just to go into, because obviously this is a UX research podcast. So, how did you get into kind of the design space? Is that what you studied, or is it something you came to later?
So yeah, I guess I'm coming from a family of doctors and
No,
scientists.
wow.
So since I was a very little kid, I was exposed to, let's say, logical thinking.
Mm,
And despite like this very rational environment,
mm,
basically, curiosity, creativity, appreciation for beauty were things that I've been taught to cultivate since I was very little.
mm.
So I was attracted by science because I was, but I wasn't cut for it. So what
Mm,
I tried to do then was kind of, merging the rigor that you have in the science world, and I merged that with beauty. So I
mm.
think that's kind of the definition of design to me, and that's how
Yes.
design became like my language to communicate and simplify the complexity around me. So
Wow.
yeah, it all started at a very young age because I
Hmm.
remember when I was 6, my parents got me my first computer, and
Uh,
I don't know. I'm guessing that we're probably the same age. So you remember that back then
Probably.
was
So-
was difficult to. I mean, I'm just guessing based on the age of your
Yeah, no,
of
no,
your
no. I guess I look young then, so thank you.
Anyhow, I was saying like back then was very rare to have a computer,
Yeah.
so I consider myself lucky in that sense.
Mm.
And since I was that little, I started nerding out and experimenting with paint and with all of that.
Yeah, I
Then
remember that.
a few years after, I started playing around with Photoshop instead. And I think
Oh,
we're talking about probably Photoshop 4 or 5. I don't even remember,
wow.
but
Mm.
early version.
That's true.
Um, yeah. And then I started coding as well. So
Oh,
when I
wow.
was 13, I built my first like website in HTML.
Oh,
So that was
okay.
like my first milestone into the super nerdy part of design.
Wow.
Yeah, everything started there. Then what I decided to do as soon as I got out of high school was basically starting a business. So I
Mm.
did open a company with two co-founders, and it was like design agency or web agency back then, because
Ah.
today you cannot say web agency anymore, but
No,
you
no,
know,
no, no. Out of date.
back in the days was the hot thing to do. And
Yes.
yeah, the business was quite successful. It was based here in Rome.
Okay.
And it lasted for something like probably 6, 7 years.
Hmm.
After that, I was like, okay, now I need, new challenges. So I
Mm.
decided to move abroad, and I went to the US.
Mm.
And in there, I started working as a freelancer, a contractor for startups
Mm.
in different industries. And that lasted for probably about 5, 6 years.
Wow.
While I was in the US, I also decided to go back to school. So I decided to go at the Academy of Art University to study illustration because I was
Oh.
very much skilled in graphic design and everything related to that, but
Mm.
illustration was not forte. So
Okay.
yeah, I embarked into that.
Ah.
Um, yeah, and then long story short, me and my husband, we decided to move back to London. We're talking 2017, and
Mm.
that's where we embarked in a new venture together, which is
Mm.
True Layer, the company that I was talking about
Ah.
earlier.
Wow.
It was like the highlight of my career, I guess, because
Mm.
it's not something that you do every day, growing a company from 0 to 500
No.
people.
Wow.
So yeah, there was an
That's an
intense journey.
experience. Yeah.
It is. And I started as an individual contributor, and from there, I can say today that I built, a world-class experience design
Wow.
team. So yeah, it was very, very intense, and it was an
Yeah.
emotional coaster because all of
Mm.
this happened like super fast at the speed of light.
Yeah.
And of course, it was like a lot of highs and lows, like a lot of challenges. But
Mm.
thinking about it, I definitely cherish every second of the journey.
Yeah.
And yeah, and to culminate like this, what brought me to design and where I arrived, I
Mm.
guess the earlier experience also gave me the chance to elevate design at the executive level, which is something that doesn't happen in all of the companies, even in like,
Yeah.
cool product companies. So I
Mm.
was very happy to be sitting and represent design and make sure that like design was valued and we were hiring enough resources, not having like
Mm.
people too stretched in what they're doing. Uh, that's a challenge, but it was very rewarding for me to do that.
Mm.
And yeah, I also have been doing some, public speaking, and my hope was, of course, to guide the next generation of design leader, I guess.
Yes. Wow, wow. So that's some story. So you got founding, obviously your design skills, coding is a bit of everything in there to create who you are today. So that's also really good for our listeners as well, because maybe someone who is entering the field of UX or something have come from maybe even connected fields. Maybe they've learned coding or but they're eventually finding is I think that's what I would take as well from your story, kind of you find your place in the industry.
Yeah, I guess like, change is something that I value a lot. And I think like
Mm.
as designers, as researchers is something that we always need to embrace because our discipline
Yes.
is changing constantly. I mean, I
Yes.
remember, when I was founding, I was saying earlier, the web agency, like the
Mm.
UX designer was not a thing back then. I was
No.
called, just designer or like,
Yeah.
yeah.
Graphic designer. Yeah.
We had like the webmaster person back then,
Yeah.
but then
Exactly.
all of those people started to evolve into something else. So I think like change is something that we always need to
Yeah.
embrace.
Absolutely. Yeah. Yeah. I think back then would have been like human-centered design, like, but that was something that was maybe a bit hidden, something that wasn't
Yeah.
easy to find or to study. So yeah, no, it's true how the industry has evolved, and also the fact that
Yeah.
you've got this entrepreneurial spirit as well, that you've always been kind of creating something or founding something. So that's nice that you've been able to carry that forward as well. And also congratulations on what you created
Thank
out in London. Out of curiosity, because you said you founded it with your husband, is he also a designer, or what is his expertise that was able, or is it just let's do this
You
together?
remember me talking about like the logical thinking, the rational
Uh,
part of my family, and the science part. He's an engineer. So
okay, okay,
I
that makes
needed
sense now.
to, balance myself with
There you
with
go.
somebody aligned to that.
That's cool. That's cool. Also, going back as well, that the experience you mentioned about using paint, etc., that brought back a lot of memories. I think I was maybe 3 or 4 years old when my granddad bought his first computer, because my granddad was always like following technology. And when the first computers came out, he bought one. So yeah, I think I was 3 or 4 when I was like playing on the keyboard with him. And yeah, from there, I always had kind of a passion around tech and things like that. And I didn't move into coding eventually. I just stayed on Paint. I remained on Paint. I didn't.
Well, I mean,
Maybe there's still time for me, but I've never been like a mathematical thinker. So I stuck to Paint and eventually moved into more research. I prefer more the human side of design and kind of the interpersonal relationship that people have with the things they use. So that was eventually what I went into. But anyway, this podcast isn't about me.
well,
um,
I mean, like we can make it about you though, because I'm enjoying what
no,
you're
no.
saying, and I'm very aligned with, the human aspect of design.
Yes.
I'm
Yeah.
actually working right now on a talk that I'm going to do in London
Ah,
in November, which is focused on, the use of AI, how design
ah,
can humanize,
yes.
AI. So I'm totally aligned
Ah,
with what you're saying here.
this is also a big topic as well, AI, which probably we need another hour just to talk about that. Um, so, so you founded all of these companies. Amongst all of that, also just even your journey into design, because obviously most of our listeners are maybe new to design or user experience, and are maybe facing various challenges. So maybe to bring it down to a level for them so that they can maybe, let's say, relate to your story. What were the challenges that you faced maybe early on in your career, and that you had to overcome, and how did you overcome those?
Oh, that's a very difficult question. I think like I kind of touched on this earlier without
Mm,
like, planning. And like I think change is the key.
yeah.
So when you have challenge in front of you, like for my personality, I tend to go where challenge is because I know that I want
Mm,
to grow.
yes.
So I guess like not trying to be prepared for change, but
Mm,
embracing the fact that change is inevitable.
yeah.
So, and this, I guess, applies to every step of my journey. Even right
Mm,
now, like,
yeah.
I know that I have quite a baggage, but still I feel like, oh my God, I'm starting something new. Where do I start? I don't know what to do. I
Mm.
have imposter syndrome and all of that. So I think like this constant thing of just breathe and think
Mm,
that like change is good for you because you're going to grow out of
yes.
it. So
Yeah.
yeah, I guess that's the only
No,
thing
no, no.
that comes to me.
No, that's really, I think it's a good point. Also, something that I've noticed as well, that sometimes you can be scared of change, especially early on in your career, because you feel you need to almost like rigidly fit into a mold, like to be, I want to be a UX designer, or I want to be a UX researcher. So I need to do X, Y, and Z to be that researcher. But sometimes you also, the role that you imagined, you might not end up doing that role, if that makes sense. And you have to be open to a potential change in
Oh,
your, what you,
100%, 100%.
and I think that's what I found as well. Like, I didn't expect to be a podcaster. I didn't expect to, I don't know, like I'm
And
probably
here
doing more,
you are, look at you.
and here I am with me at today. Like, I probably ended up doing more branding, more creativity, more also in my previous roles, more marketing. And so what you imagine as a UX researcher, which is my passion still, but I've probably, since I became a UX researcher, done 65% research and the rest has been other things. So if I was resistant to that change or adaptability, then maybe I would have missed out on opportunities, missed out on personal and career growth. So, no, I completely agree with that, and I think it's really good advice. Um, Okay, so now probably moving on, it would be a good point to move on to Mindmap. So, as we mentioned before, you're an entrepreneur with all these ideas and creativity that you have. So, Mindmap, where did that come from? And also, how does it tie in with this? You mentioned on your profile that you're an advocate for mental health. So, how does that all tie in? Why would you class yourself as an advocate, and how does that tie in with Mindmap?
Yeah. So I guess mental health in general has always been like very close to my heart due to personal experiences. One being my brother, he has schizophrenia, so I've grown
Okay.
up in an environment like with a serious
Mm,
illness that I had to deal with, and I had to help my family and my brother with. On top of that, during my journey, I've been suffering as well from post-traumatic stress disorder myself. So
mm,
that's why mental health to me is very important because I
yes.
really touched the ground and needed
Mm,
to, go back
yes.
up. So even though I have like this, let's call it passion if you want. I don't know if we
Mm,
can call it passion, but yeah.
yeah.
Even though if I'm very, very close to it, I never
Mm,
thought of making mental health like part of my professional life until 2 years ago. What
mm,
happened 2 years ago? Basically, during my journey at True Layer, I burned out twice.
mm.
And the reason of burnout are multiple. I told you that we scaled this company from 0 to 500 people, and that's really a bit
I can
more
only
freezing.
imagine.
Now,
Yeah.
add on top of that, the complexity that I had to face as a manager during the pandemic,
Mm,
dealing with like the team and making sure that things were running smoothly.
yeah. A lot
On
of
top of
pressure.
that, we also had the big tech layoffs that, unfortunately are happening.
Mm,
And as managers, you have to deal with that complexity.
yeah.
And from a human point of view, it's extremely difficult. We
Mm,
talk, of course, most of the time for the people that are part of the layoff, but
mm,
trust me, unfortunately, sometimes being on the other side is extremely exhausting as
yeah.
well.
Of course. Of course.
On top of all of that complexity, add personal life to it. Unfortunately, I had an ectopic pregnancy, and
Oh.
then after dealing with the grief of that,
Mm,
very happy I welcome two kids in my life. But
mm.
you know, parenting is difficult as well while you're trying to balance, being at the top
Yes.
table. So
Mm,
yeah, this whole package was exhausting.
yes.
But
Yes.
even more than exhausting. I think it was just like simply too much to handle.
Mm,
And therefore, I remember like, a few years ago, I was waking up at night with racing thoughts and I
mm,
couldn't sleep well. I was constantly anxious and I couldn't give a name to my anxiety. So
mm,
I started doing something, which I guess is very designy. In the middle of the night, I started taking a pen and writing down things. I was doing what is called brain dump. So I was writing all
mm,
of my thoughts on paper, and over time, I started shaping them. So I started like visualizing them.
mm,
So yeah, I created like a data visualization of my emotion, my mental state. And over time, I kind of created like a structure that was making sense for all of the different problems that I was
mm. Yeah.
facing. And I've been doing that for 2 years, 3 years maybe. And then one day I was
Mm.
like, wait a minute, I think I can scale this and have other people too. So I guess that's how
Wow.
Mindmap taken for so
Wow.
far.
That's a story. And thank you as well for going into those personal details and feeling that you can share them in this space. It's a privilege to have that on my podcast. But yeah, I can only imagine how that would have felt, especially with all the pressures that you were experiencing of being a founder and running a company, hiring of 500 people, but then also the layoffs. That it's hard, obviously, if you're the employee, but for the employer, you obviously you know what you're doing to these
Okay.
people.
I love my team, and sometimes,
Exactly,
unfortunately, is nothing that you can do other than, of course, try to help the people, but
exactly.
still,
It affects both sides. Yeah. Yeah, it affects
Yeah.
both sides. Like obviously the layoffs are in the obviously on LinkedIn you see all these big tech layoffs and you obviously sympathize naturally with the employee because now they have no job, etc.
Of
But
course, of
of
course.
course, which is obviously a bad situation. But there is also another side. There'll be people that are having to perform these layoffs on behalf of the big tech or these companies. That
You
also
know,
it's a
I think
difficult
that the reason
conversation.
why it's important for me to say that is not because I want empathy in that sense,
No,
but I
no.
think it's important for future leaders to understand that this is part
Yes.
of the job. Because,
Yeah.
you know, a lot of designer wants to become like
Of
head of
course.
or
Yeah.
a title,
Yeah.
but
I
that
don't,
is
but
part of the package.
yeah, no, I don't at all. Like, in my previous job, I was asked what my potential, like, what I would like to have or envision for my career growth, like leader, senior, and I said I don't want to be a leader or like, I don't know, manager or anything because it would involve those conversations, which I just couldn't do. I prefer to be a mentor and kind of work alongside juniors. I help them grow. But yeah, that side of being a leader is something that doesn't appeal much to me. So yeah, thank you for also bringing that side of the story out as well. And yeah, I completely like understand as well. Like I've experienced myself like recently due to just past experiences and let's call them traumas, anxiety, social anxiety, and that's been a journey as well for myself, kind of dealing with all of that and seeking help via professionals. And I think it's good to speak out loud about those things that what you see on LinkedIn or even like as someone in your position as a founder or someone who runs a company that you don't have to be that picture perfect founder that is super self-confident, doesn't have any like anxiety, doesn't face mental strains or stresses, that there is a person there and you can almost guarantee that they're facing a lot of pressure, a lot of stress, they're not sleeping well, and they'll be facing their own personal challenges from their own childhood, their own personal struggles. So it's nice to hear that from someone like yourself who is in and has been in that position as well. So thank you
Yeah, I
for
mean,
sharing.
it's like there is no such a thing as a founder that has no anxiety and no stress. Like you cannot do that
No,
if you don't
absolutely.
put it in the package. So yeah, I think it's absolutely important to share
Yeah.
things. And you know, I'm all for sharing vulnerabilities,
Mm,
especially as a leader, because
yes,
that's how you give trust and build
exactly.
trust.
Exactly, exactly. And also shows that you don't have to be a certain person to be a founder or to do something, like to do what you want to do. For example, I don't know, probably most people don't believe that I have social anxiety because I'm a podcast host and I speak to
Of
people, my
course.
face is out there. But it's a personal challenge that I've dealt with, and my way to deal with it is to do this sort of thing because my creativity side of me likes doing this. But obviously, I have this personal struggle, but I don't want it to beat me. So it's just something that I fight against on a daily basis. But yeah. So you mentioned before with the story of Mindmap that it actually came from a brain dump with your like racing thoughts during the night. So that's actually super interesting as well that this kind of idea came from your, let's say, personal, should I call it a battle that you had of anxiety or the pressure you were facing, that it led to the creation of this brain dump that is now Mindmap. So what was that brain dump? What were the notes that you were taking, and how did that kind of shape into, I imagine, the product you're creating or have created today?
Yeah, I guess like without like digging into too much detail, I think we can think about a stream of consciousness, right?
Mm.
So what is a stream of consciousness? Is pure chaos, like everything is disorganized, everything in there.
Mm.
And that's, I guess, if we want to visualize it, is what the brain looks like when we're confused, when we're stressed, and when we
Mm.
have anxiety. So I think
Yeah.
it's very important to, in the conversation that we just had, we use a lot the word I'm stressed, I have
Yeah.
anxiety. But
Mm.
if you go to therapy, the therapist will tell you stress means nothing. How are you feeling? What is the feeling
Yeah.
behind stress, right?
Yes.
So I guess that's what I started to do. And I've been in therapy before.
Mm.
So I started digging into what is this stress. I started giving names to the things that I was feeling. So I kind
Mm.
of create a structure that starts from the feeling and digging into that feeling, and
Mm.
then map that out so that you can reuse it for all of the feelings that you have,
Mm.
and also see patterns and yeah, we
Ah.
basically. Again, it's a data visualization of your inner world so that it makes clarity and helps you navigate
Mm.
the complexity of what you're going through.
Yeah, kind of almost like maps the synapses in your brain. Obviously, everything's
Yeah.
connected, so you have the stress and what is causing the stress, and it's kind of a pattern. And it's nice that you're giving a visualization to that, to give names to it, and to because that helps you obviously process the feelings that you have. Because if there's a name to it, and you can narrow down onto what the cause is, that can help you understand how to counteract that. So this product that you've created, what does it look like? Obviously, I think it's in stealth at the moment, so it's not
It is. It
live.
is
Is that
under
like so
development.
under
But
development?
yeah,
So
I mean, like from a
I don't know
visual
what you can say,
perspective,
but
well, I mean, like I can tell you what I'm working on, and then
cool. Yeah,
as soon as
absolutely.
we release, you can see yourself. But yeah, I mean,
Absolutely.
like the shape that we're trying to give it visually is so after a lot of user feedback that we collected,
Mm.
initially the idea was just to use the concept of the mind map. So a data visualization that is, if you want, similar also to a tree diagram. So you
Okay.
start from one point and you start having, all of the
Mm.
branches underneath,
Yeah.
going as deep as you want.
Mm.
This was the main visualization. Then I realized after talking to people, after doing some user testing, that some people don't relate to that visualization and they
Okay.
need a different view. So we also
Oh.
are developing like a card view where you're basically
Mm.
putting together those keywords that you have in the data visualization balloons and create instead simple sentences that you can
Mm.
navigate, and we help
Oh.
you write the card basically.
Oh wow.
So yeah, and from a user perspective, when you are inputting things, there are multiple things that you can say. You can do a stream
Mm.
of consciousness, and with the AI, we help you unpack it basically, so that
Mm.
you arrive at the end with simple keywords that are visualized, so that you're like, now I'm saying what I was doing here.
Mm. Oh wow.
Is
That's
answer your question?
absolutely, absolutely. Yeah, it was just to kind of visualize how it would look and how it would potentially work. So obviously, this product, once it's eventually released, the aim of it is to help someone to process their emotional needs or their stresses or the anxieties that they're facing, or even if they don't have, let's say, those words of stress and anxiety, but just a way to visualize the feelings you have and be able to give names to them, process them, and kind of map them, mind map, and map them so you can easily visualize them and kind of then do what you want with them. Is that the idea?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's correct. I mean, like overall, I guess the claim is that emotional well-being is broken. And we were saying that earlier,
Yeah.
right? Like
Yeah.
the fact that we don't recognize
Mm.
stress as a specific emotion, but we generalize things, or the
Mm.
fact that a lot of people are hiding that they're,
Yes.
feeling stressed and are not like, just embracing it and speaking out loud. So what we want
Mm.
to do is fixing the fact that
Yes.
emotional is broken. The
Mm.
vision is to, revolutionize, in fact, to normalize emotional freedom. So, in other words, we can say we don't want that stress controls you, but the other way around. You should be
Mm.
able to control stress. And as a
Yeah.
designer, I believe we have that power. We can
Yes.
control complexity, as we were saying at the beginning, and
Mm.
make it simple to digest. So I think
Yes.
our brain needs that, especially because
Mm.
we are in those moments when and talk with ourselves, and it's very difficult to get out of that.
Yes.
So I guess like visualizing things, especially with information architecture, which is powerful design
Absolutely.
we can do that. So
Mm.
the mission, if you want, of Mindmapp is to unlock potential of individuals one mind at a time.
Wow, wow, I like that motto at the end. No, that sounds really, really cool, and it kind of ties in with what therapists usually ask their patients to do, is to write things down. I've done it in the past. Write down what you're feeling. Well, when you have a certain thought or a feeling that is related to bringing on stress or worry, or could be, let's say, obviously to keep on topic, related to the job search. And I don't know, for example, you feel inadequate because you're not providing for the ones you love, or you feel unworthy to receive a job or not good enough, and writing all of those feelings and words down. So that way it's out of your mind, your body, and it's on paper or on card or whatever. And then you can work with it. You can give names to it. And something that I like to do is to write poems with it, or write music, because I like music. And that helps me to to process those thoughts and feelings and give them a place to live. So I think this is also a nice concept as well, to have it on something, map it out, or use these cards and give those feelings a place to live, and allow you to work with them, rather than always wondering where they are, what are they, why do I feel this way. So that's
Exactly.
really nice
Something that you
project.
can re-access, because of course, like, I mean, even if we evolve, we get
Yeah,
older. I mean, some of our processes are the same. So
absolutely.
what we try to do as well with this process is digging in. I like to say, because you need to go deep, and of course you need to
Yeah,
be willing to do that. So you need
absolutely.
to start with the right fit in that sense. But once you do that, that can allow you to unlock the potential that I was talking about. Because if you realize that you are having a specific feeling recurringly, and then you realize that the feeling is, attached to whatever trigger, if you realize what the trigger is, then you're able to work on that, change your behavior, and manage it. So, you
Yeah,
were talking about writing things. There is plenty of research from
absolutely.
Stanford, Yale, etc., that like writing things down helps processing things
Absolutely.
and thoughts. So yeah,
Yeah,
that's the approach.
because the brain can be a big place. It doesn't have limits.
You
So
can
yeah,
get lost
those
there.
exactly. I'm most often lost in there in my own thoughts. So yeah, no, like completely agree with everything you're saying, and also what you're creating as well. I feel it would be really beneficial to the users and to people. Will this be in app form or website? Like, what will the forms of this product be?
Those are very specific questions that we're still figuring out. My
Okay,
initial idea was web because of the complexity of the visualization.
true.
Technical viability is a thing, and go-to-market
Apps.
is another thing. So you need to pick something. We will probably start
Yeah.
with the app, and
Okay.
then see where we go from there.
And then grow. Yeah. No, that'll be interesting to see how that will grow and develop with user needs, etc.
But
Cool.
there are a
So,
lot of new things and technology in terms of also
yes.
how to visualize those type of conversation. So
Yeah.
yeah, we're experimenting multiple things at the moment and
Wow.
see what user prefer.
Oh wow. That would be for another episode, I think, because that'll need a lot of time, I imagine, to discuss. Cool. So, kind of maybe to tie and wrap things up for the audience as well, because obviously we've touched on it previously that there are a lot of people that are suffering because of layoffs, or even just looking for their first role in UX or UXR, and maybe are struggling, maybe also emotionally, mentally as well. What is the advice that you would give to somebody that is looking for their first job or is affected by layoffs to deal with the stress or deal with the anxiety that comes along with being laid off or looking for your next job?
I guess like there is no one size fit all answer for this because
Not at all.
when it comes to emotional balance, everyone reacts differently.
Yes.
And going back to how we're developing things in Mindmap, we recognize that each individual, each person journey is very personal. So we are, building something that looks into that customization. Otherwise, like it's not going to go anywhere. So I guess we cannot assume that like the same event has the same impact on everyone, and we cannot even assume like that the same feeling that you have can be managed in the same way
Yeah.
of your friend or your family. So I personally don't believe in those apps that are kind of saying, oh, you're sad, try to meditate. Well, maybe meditation works for me, but maybe what you need is, getting an ice cream, going out with a friend. I
Yeah,
don't
yeah.
know.
I can't
So
meditate, so that
yeah,
was a
here
good
you
answer.
go. So even though we share common experiences, like finding the emotional balance is, as I was saying earlier, like a deeply individual process that requires personal reflection and that, journey of growth that we talked about at the beginning. So I think we're going back to the change thing that we were saying earlier.
Yeah.
So back to the question of looking for a job or getting into the into the professional life for the first time. I since I don't want to give like a generic answer, I think I will try to offer a guidance for people to embark on a journey of personal reflection and growth.
That's nice.
Um, yeah, I guess like, while looking for the next opportunity, I would suggest to ask yourself some question that allow you to frame what you want to do next. And, those questions could be, what did you love about your previous role, for instance? Or what didn't work in your previous role or in your previous
Yeah.
company? Or is there something that you'd like to learn, or is that something that you need to learn, like a new skill set, for instance,
Yeah.
or to go wild, as we were saying, do something completely different because maybe like you just want to shift and do something else. So I
Yeah.
guess asking those type of questions and going through this process, you can reflect, upskill, reskill, or even explore, career pivots, which is very important. So, yeah, in my personal experience as an entrepreneur, somebody that has always like built things, I think nothing helps personal growth more than embracing change, as I was saying earlier.
Yeah.
So you need to step out of your comfort zone, and as how painful that is, especially when you're losing your job, it builds resilience. And in my, opinion, resilience is the thing that more than anything else helps you adapt, manage change, and overcome obstacles. So if you take this route, I think that like, whatever you do next is going to be undoubtedly like better than what you were doing before, because in this
Yeah.
process you've grown.
Yeah.
So I think
I like
it's
that.
important to, think in this way to
No,
um,
absolutely.
stay positive and think about like what is happening inside you that is actually positive.
No, I like that. I like that. And I think you're correct in not giving too specific advice to that feeling because, like you say, everyone's experience is different. So it's better to kind of, step out the box, kind of reflect on your experience and focus on how can I use this experience to grow. Not focus too much on the feelings that you have related to, I'm anxious about finding my next role, but taking that step out and maybe tying it in as well with what we mentioned before about writing things down. Obviously, eventually when Mindmapp comes out, you can use
Yeah.
Mindmapp and using a bit of a plug for you there. And using those methods can help you just reflect better on your process and focus on that there will be an end to this, that it's not going to last forever. I think that's something that I tell myself as well, that eventually, even if it's hard now, even if there are also difficult emotions to deal with, that eventually I'll be in a better position for it. And I will also learn from this experience as well. Not to add, obviously, to the advice you've already given, but just from my own personal experience, that I will look back and think I'm almost glad that I had that I had to pass through that challenge and those feelings, because now I'm in a position that I understand somebody else who's going through that, so I can speak to them, I can share my experience with them, and that can enrich their journey as well. So thank you for sharing that advice and allowing me to put my little piece on top.
Well, I really hope that this is helpful for somebody. I mean, again, like
Absolutely.
I've been through this myself, and of course, I'm sharing what helped me, and I really hope that can
Yes.
help.
Absolutely, absolutely. No, thank you for coming on. Thank you for sharing also your personal experiences as well, and sharing the vulnerable side. It's been probably also a therapy session for me hearing these things as well. And I hope, I hope also for our listeners as well, that they feel less alone, if they are in this job hunt, or if they are facing a layoff, or even if they're just learning experience design or UX design, that when they do eventually face these challenges in the future, that they can refer back to episodes like this or any other podcasts that are talking about similar topics, that can help them not feel as alone in the journey. So thank you.
Well, thank you, Dave, for having me. It was super fun to discuss all of this. And again, like I really hope that can help somebody. And yeah, I will notify you as soon as the app is out, so you can test it out.
Yes,
And a lot of UX researcher for sure have something
absolutely.
precious to tell me in terms of feedback.
Absolutely. I was going to say, if you want, I can be a beta tester. But no, no,
Oh,
no, I
yes, of
will.
course, I will put you in there.
There we go. I mean, no, no, no. That actually, I was going to say at the end there that once it is released, then maybe we can do a follow-up episode, just to kind of go through Mindmapp, maybe show our viewers as well of the show, like how the program looks, the product looks, and just, yeah, maybe give an introduction to it if you'd like, anyway.
I would love that, but what I'm hearing here, Dale, you're having like a creative approach to this podcast, and it's super good because like it looks like you're a machine that wants to build stuff. So that's super
It's
interesting to
true.
hear.
It's true. You call me. I'm always thinking of new ideas. But cool.